Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Kellen here with Droid Life, and you can see in front of me, I've got a variety of phones hanging out here. Obviously, iPhone 6 up front here, although it's sort of hard to tell, it's just a big black slab. I've got Xperia Z3 Compact, Galaxy Alpha, and then this is actually last year's Moto X. So the reason I have these all in front of me is because we talk a lot about flagship devices, mid-range devices, small devices, big devices. And so the iPhone 6 this year jumped up in size. It's got a 4.7 inch display. It's obviously gotten bigger. Apple sort of jumped on the idea that people like bigger phones. But so then we've also got this other range of Android phones now that are starting to drop back a little bit in size. So they still got flagship type specs, but they've sort of shrunk a little bit to maybe offer people like me who like smaller phones something to maybe choose from. So I just wanted to kind of talk about them, do a little comparison, especially with the Galaxy Alpha, since this is Samsung's first metal framed phone, which a lot of people think means it needs to be compared to the iPhone 6. So let's just talk a little bit about each one. So iPhone 6, obviously Apple's new flagship. This is the space gray version. So you've got the all metal body. You've got the 8 megapixel camera up front with that dual flash. Very, very thin phone. Volume rocker. On the right, you've got your power lock switch. You got really nothing up front, and then you do have that headphone jack on the bottom, along with that speaker, and then the lightning port. You also have a fingerprint sensor right here on the front of the device where the home button is. Overall, a well-built phone. Obviously, there's all the bending going on of the 6 Plus. The iPhone 6 seems to be fine. And obviously, I haven't bent mine. It still looks pretty straight there. But so in general, you've got a 4.7 inch HD display, if you want to call that Retina, whatever Apple calls it. It's basically just barely better than 720p. And you'll know that most Android phones nowadays are 1080p, or you're even seeing Quad HD. So by Android standards, the display on the iPhone 6 is actually sort of mid-range, if you will. Although once you use this phone, you'll notice that the display is fine and you probably have no complaints about it whatsoever. But just pointing that out. It's also got just a gig of RAM inside. It does have a 64-bit processor on the inside though, which performs quite well. And then you have, the 8 megapixel shooter on the back, whereas most Android phones now are 13 megapixel, 16 megapixel, 20 megapixel. We're sort of going up and up there. Now, when you use a phone like this, and you see the incredible pictures it can take, you sort of don't care that it's a lower 8 megapixel resolution. As long as it's taking at least 8 megapixel resolution, most people probably be fine with that. So that's the iPhone 6. Okay. If we pick up, say, the Xperia Z3 Compact, you're looking at a 4.6 inch display. It's also HD 720p display. It's not slightly over like the iPhone 6. Got a 20 megapixel camera on the back. It's got 2 gig of RAM. It's got one of the newest Snapdragon processors, which is a quad core Snapdragon 801. And it's got this little body. It also houses 16 gig of storage and then can go up to 128 gig extra with SD card slot. It's a beastly little phone. And so if we compare it to the iPhone, so again, the iPhone has a 4.7 inch display and the Xperia Z3 Compact is a 4.6 inch display. So if we sort of set these side by side, you can see the bezels on the iPhone 6 are quite substantial. So I should also point out that the iPhone has around an 1800 milliamp hour battery. Z3 Compact has a 2600 milliamp hour battery. So it's definitely a little shorter, a little more squat. It's definitely a little wider. But as someone who's had the iPhone 6 in hand for a few weeks now, I can tell you that it's almost too thin. It's also incredibly slippery depending on the time of day because of this aluminum sort of back. Z3 Compact, not slippery at all, and that little bit of thickness actually allows it to sit really nicely in your hand. So you can just see the differences here in design. So Apple clearly wanted to keep the bottom chin the same size as the top there to keep it proportional. It's quite a tall device, sort of like how the HTC One M8 was a little bit too tall. I would argue the iPhone 6 is there as well. So just a little comparison there to the Z3. Actually, before we get to the Alpha, so here's last year's Moto X. And the only reason I'm really showing you this is it has a 4.7 inch display as well. And again, you can see the size. So it's a lot shorter. It's also definitely a lot thicker. But it just shows you that Apple really sort of made quite a tall device with the iPhone 6. All right, so here's the Galaxy Alpha, right? So people have wanted to compare this phone to the iPhone 6 because, well, it has a metal frame. So if we take a little bit of a tour here, you can see the devices. I don't really think they look all that similar. Maybe if you compared the Galaxy Alpha to the iPhone 5, you might get some comparisons that might make it look a lot different or a lot more the same. But iPhone 6, I don't really think looks anything like this phone. So it's definitely a lot rounder, a little more iPod Touch-ish. On the bottom, though, you can see the single speaker grill there, which sort of does make it look a little bit the same, I would argue then. But it has a 4.7-inch display as well. But again, the size here, you can see how much taller the iPhone 6 is, which is a little odd. You do have an AMOLED panel here on the Galaxy Alpha, whereas you have an LCD there on the iPhone 6. Both are probably great panels. Again, the iPhone 6 panel I've used for a couple weeks now and I have no complaints there, even with its lower resolution. The Galaxy Alpha is going to have an AMOLED panel that's probably gorgeous as well. Samsung's been doing really well with those as of late. But you got 4.7-inch display here, 2 gig of RAM, Snapdragon 801 processor, 12 megapixel camera on the back. You got a heart rate sensor and a fingerprint scanner, and you've got sort of all the stuff you would expect on a flagship device. It just sort of has that smaller display. Definitely interesting though to see, the iPhone is always considered a flagship, but when you compare it to mid-range or these sort of smaller flagships, that it doesn't technically stand up on paper, but then again, it performs quite well. So I just kind of wanted to show you guys a quick comparison of those. Also of note, you have a removable battery here on the Galaxy Alpha, so you can take this back cover off, things like that. So anyways, quick comparison in hand. If you're looking for just a personal opinion on a favorite, I haven't spent enough time with all of them yet. The iPhone, though, we'll have our sort of final thoughts on this soon. Definitely not my favorite phone. I won't be sticking to that. Obviously, I run an Android site, but I wouldn't be sticking to it anyway. There's just some flaws in the software and stuff I can't handle. I'm probably going to make the Z3 Compact my phone of choice for a while. Really excited to use this phone on LTE here in the States. And, that red color is just fun. It just feels really good in hand in general. It's waterproof. All that good stuff. The Galaxy Alpha will give a spin to, but Samsung's just skins in general that they put on phones aren't really my favorite, and I also don't like the home button setup. So I'll probably avoid this as a daily driver, although we will definitely do some testing with it. So yeah, out of all of these, obviously the Moto X is old and out of the picture now. Probably going to go with Z3 Compact for a little bit. It just seems like the phone that interests me the most. So anyways, if you guys have comments, questions, anything about any of these devices, obviously drop those in the comments. But for now, we are Droid Life, and we're out. Peace.